My greatest Thanksgiving memory. I would have to say it's probably this one. Bringing together all the families here in North Reddington Beach, Florida, and having a great 2011 Thanksgiving.
I want to personally thank you for that sappy little Thanksgiving message, Dan, but I think now is a good time for me to tell you that you were the only person asked to give a Thanksgiving memory. Everybody else was asked to think back 40 years ago to 1971 and give us their most memorable moment from that year. Now, you may think that you know what the biggest moment from that year was, but I think you'd be surprised to hear that everyone else has another big event from 1971 in mind that they think is the biggest moment from that year.
Well, the biggest thing that happened in 1971, part of it was, this was the debut of the CBS show All in the Family. But it was also the debut of All in the Florida Family, because that's the year Aunt Jill and I moved to Florida.
The best thing that happened in 1971 was that Ed Sullivan aired its last show.
Ed Sullivan Show aired its final episode?
The Ed Sullivan Show aired its final episode. Do you know how sad that was? That wasn't the best thing. That was the saddest thing that happened in 1971.
In 1971, the Colts won the Super Bowls.
Perfect.
In 1971, the most interesting thing to me that happened was the first whale named Shamu died.
Oh, wow. In 1971, Walt Disney World opened. I remember in 1971, Snoop Dogg was born. In 71, Kid Rock was born.
In 1971, the Allman Brothers plays their legendary concert at Fillmore East. Rock on.
The most memorable thing that happened in 1971 was Charles Manson was sentenced to death.
No, we got engaged in 1971. That was the most
No, it was 72 we got engaged.
No, we got married in 72.
No, you got it all wrong.
I was 19 years old and you were 22.
You see, this is what I'm talking about. 40 years later, she still doesn't get it right. I'm telling you, it was 72. Not 71. What is the matter with you? Get out of here.
Man, I remember in 1971, I was sitting around, and when I heard, it's so sad, Jim Morrison, he died in a bathtub in Paris. It was very upsetting, man. Rock on, Jim Morrison. Forever young.
Back in 1971, they landed on the moon. That's one of the great things that happened.
My favorite moment of 1971 was Christy Yamaguchi was born, and then later I watched her skate in the Olympics. Happy, happy day.
I remember 1971 when Southwest Airlines started.
Our favorite thing from 1971 was when Evel Knievel jumped 19 cars to set a world record.
My most memorable event of 1971 is when Greenpeace officially came into existence.
Hey, 1971. Oh, a fabulous year. No, as a matter of fact, it wasn't a great year because the voting age was lowered from 21 to 18, and we've been in big trouble ever since.
Well, what I remember the most from 1971 is Jim Morrison died and Shamu died. And did they have anything in common? What's all that all about?
Back in 1971, Corey Haim was born. I learned that from reading Tiger Beat.
Well, 1971 was a fantastic year. Actually, I just got my first Hollywood, interview and so forth. But I remember, of all things, 1971, I remember Louis Armstrong singing, "It's a Wonderful World." And he passed away, yes.
The best thing I remember about 1971 was when Tupac was born. Rest in peace, Tupac.
1971. I had just finished my second year of teaching.
My favorite moment of 1971 was when England and Australia played cricket for the first time together.
I was a Cub fan in 1971. I had dreamt and wished that the Cubs could bring home a pennant. And here it is, all these years later, and I'm still wishing for the same home run.
Fondest memories of 1971. An excellent question, if I hearken back properly. Let's see. I believe young couples were in the throes of passion with the loving romantic tunes of Sugar Sugar from the Archies. That was just coming out of that period. I bet you there was probably some very romantic times that took place. And speaking of leading to offspring, I believe 71 is an infamous year for the birth of Pedro Martinez. Mark Wahlberg of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Lance Armstrong, to name a few. There's probably some other not so famous individuals, but unfortunately, who cares?
My most favorite moment was when Joe Frazier beat Muhammad Ali in 1971 in the fight of the century.
I remember my favorite thing happening in 1971 was my most favorite person was born. Ricky Martin, living la vida loca. Peace. Adios.
Wow, 40 years ago. That's a long time ago. I think that was before television or before radio. You must have been around a long time by now. 40 years ago was also disco, 1971, the year disco was basically starting. Wow, that's been a long time.
The most important moment of 1971 was when J.C. Penney launched its Helvetica trademark font. Yes, that's right. The font you know today, 40 years later, came out in 1971 thanks to J.C. Penney, and that is the one moment from that year that has stuck on my brain over all this time.
1971, General Alejandro Lanusse of Argentina takes power in a military coup. And not even a week later, the United Kingdom released all restrictions on gold ownership. Coincidence?
Gosh, thinking about the wonderful things that happened in 1971, the best thing that happened was the birth of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange.
You all are crazy. The most important thing that happened in 1971 is that Dan was born. Yay! Happy birthday to my wonderful son, Dan. There have been 40 wonderful years.
Happy birthday, Dan. It's been 40 great, long years.
Happy birthday to my wife's sister's son. That's Dan. Yes, that's Dan.
Happy birthday to my sister's son, my nephew Dan.
Happy birthday, Uncle Dan. Bye. Happy birthday, everyone.
Happy birthday to my mom's sister's son.
Happy birthday to my daddy.
Happy birthday to my wife's cousin, Dan.
Happy birthday to my cousin Dan. Happy birthday, Daddy. You're the best.
Happy birthday to my cousin, Dan.
Happy birthday to my daughter's husband, Dan.
I want to call a shout out to my husband's sister's husband, Dan. Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday to my sister's husband, Dan.
I'd like to say happy birthday to my wife's sister's daughter, husband, Dan.
Happy birthday to my sister's daughter's husband, Dan. 40 years old. Oh, my gosh.
Happy birthday, Uncle Dan.
Happy 40th birthday, Dan. You're old.
Happy birthday to my cousin Dan. Welcome to your 40s. Feels pretty good. Love you.
Happy birthday to my brother and sister's son, Daniel.
Happy birthday to my wife's mom's sister's son.
Happy birthday to my sister's husband's brother. And what was it like to be around when Moses parted the Red Sea, Dan?
Happy birthday to my wife's brother, son, my nephew, Dan.
Happy birthday to my husband's brother, Dan. You're old.
What number is it, 62? Oh, happy 40th, Dan. I am Ed. I am your mother's sister's anacle. Or you are the anacle, meaning you are the grandchild.
I'm saying happy birthday to my grandmother's sister's grandson, which of course makes us like that.
Happy birthday to my grandmother's brother's son. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to my mother's brother's son and my first cousin,
Dan.
Happy birthday to my brother's brother from my brother's sister. Love you.
Happy 40th birthday to my grandmother's grandson, Dan. You are now closer to 80 than you are to the day you were born.
You know I love you. I've been there from the very beginning. I think this is great. So let me wish you a happy birthday, Darren. Sorry. Dagwood. Dina. Dale. Darren. Dan. Oh, there it is. Okay, Dan. Happy birthday, Dan.
Happy birthday to my wife's brother. Have a great day. You're old. You're very old. I have some walkers and canes at the hospital that I'll bring. Happy birthday.